as we go through it. So the first one, like Mohsin alluded to, is that there's that 70% of digital transformation journeys actually fail. This is a statistic that McKinsey, amongst others, has mentioned. So it fails from a multifaceted approach. It's failed from the perspective of, you've spent a huge amount of money, the return on investment's been poor. You might have spent money and the adoption's been poor. You've spent a huge amount of money to introduce a new technology, it's not gone in, as well as various other things. And so this is something that we all want to avoid in terms of becoming a statistic of. So when I think of the digital transformation journey and how we avoid becoming a statistic to that 70%, I think of it in three phases. And we're going to investigate those three phases in this brief discussion today. The first phase is that you need a strong foundation. Every single company is in a different part of their own particular journey. So the first journey point should always be one of understanding where it is I am today. And so that phase is something I refer to as fixing the basics. So I'll go into each of these stages in a moment. The second phase is one of digital thread. How to best think of this is that if you think of every single customer journey that exists within your company, be it with other departments, be it with your external customer, that's a journey that should be something that could be easily understood with data. That is the ultimate sort of destination point that we're wanting to reach. So that's the second phase that we'll look at. The third phase is around pioneering innovation. This is where you are taking innovative technologies and you're bringing them into your organization. So these are the three phases that we're going to investigate today. And I think with the advent of COVID that we've recently experienced, one of the things that you see amongst all companies is the agenda, the energy to actually change, the desire to change, the desire to actually agree to a digital transformation journey is there. So what's really important is how do we embark upon that journey and get to a successful outcome? You don't want to use that energy and that goodwill to simply take a huge amount of funding and start on something which doesn't really impact on the front line. So when we think of the first phase, it's one for me when I look at it as being something around having a strong foundation. So when we think of a foundation, the first question we have to ask ourselves is that how mature is my current organization? And when you're doing that, you're essentially doing an audit. Now, audit's a strong word. It kind of brings up some, stress hormones, I think, for all of us when we think of that. But really, it shouldn't be perceived in that way. So this is simply a look inside where you are as an organization, both within IT as well as outside of IT. So within IT, you want to understand where is my current technology stack? Have I got, out of support Windows 7 machines out there? Have I got out of support applications on-prem? All these sort of things. Have I got good system backup going on? And just these very fundamental sort of questions. And perhaps it may be the case that you yourself don't have the know-how or the ability to do that audit. So you can always bring in a niche consultancy to do that. It doesn't need to be a McKinsey where you charge millions and it consumes all your digital budget. This is a relatively straightforward thing. You can ask Microsoft to do it, and there's various others, and you can reach out to me and I can put you in touch with that. The second point is your governance. You have to ask the question that how are projects and technologies and new ways of doing things introduced into the organization? Is it a case that it's one of who shouts the loudest and who makes the biggest noise that gets to the top of the stack? If that's the case, then that's going to be problematic later on when you're in that third phase. So it's really important, and I'll touch upon it near the end, that you go through a very strong governance approach when you're introducing any new ways of doing things. You have to ask the right sort of questions of, what problem are we trying to solve? how big is that problem? You know, it may be the case that somebody's making a huge amount of noise and the actual problem is not a huge problem. So you only get to do that if you get into the detail, get into the weeds, and understand what is that end-to-end journey path. And it's not simply about getting something into fruition. It's also about post, once it's gone, you know, once you've implemented it, what happens afterwards? Am I achieving the benefits that I aspire to achieve? Number three is a very important point, is one around data integrity and governance. What do we mean by this? What we mean by this is that the data needs to be clean. Have you got ERP instances where you've got, you know, multiple instances of the same person? Is there data that the leadership relies upon where there's a step whereby some person takes the data from the core system, massages the data, and then passes it on? So I've seen that as well, whereby we went towards you know, building all our reporting off our data lake, but there was a step before the data reached the lake whereby one of the individuals would massage the financial data and add some simulation to it. That kind of, you know, I call it adulthood data, allows the opportunity for errors to occur, and it doesn't allow you to achieve an ultimate ambition of data science or analytics, which is having data at the fingertips. Number four is about auditing your integrations. You know, we know that digital as an arena is really driven by the power of APIs and web services. So if you've got a lot of point-to-point integrations, you know, the individual ones that are not going to really fit into the journey that you're going into, that's something you want to know. So you need to do an audit of your application stack. Number five is about auditing your security. So this is from the perspective of both human behavior as well as what you've put in place. So have you, like, if we think of human behavior, there has to be corrective campaigns to correct bad behaviors, you know, via phishing campaigns, as well as other things. And then the other thing you want to, you know, look at is that, have you got the right sort of password protection? Is your Active Directory, you know, in the best state that it should be? All of these sort of key questions, and that, you know, really also links back into point number one as well, with, you know, if you've got out of support technology stack or applications, you know, you're then vulnerable from a security perspective. The end of that is that you will have your list of fix the basics. And for me, this is more important than starting and jumping into buying IoT devices and, you know, presenting presentations that look how many IoT or funky technologies we've introduced. This is more important than that. You have to get this right, because as we know, you know, everything else will follow on from this, and your journey could be easily disrupted if this isn't right there. The second element of this first point is the people thing that I mentioned. This is really important. We often forget this, that because we've got the momentum and the desire to do digital transformation, we forget people. For a journey to be a transformation journey to be successful, this was true 20 years ago as it is today, you need leadership backing. So leadership backing is really right from the top to the bottom, that this is a journey we're serious about and this is what we're going to do. So linked to that, it's also about understanding the powers of who are going to help you drive your journey. What is their perception of what you are trying to do? I'll give you an example. If we think of data science and analytics, a lot of people might mistake it that, you know, it's all about getting many reports onto my mobile, you know, a Power BI report on my mobile. That's the outcome. You know, I've got 100 reports on my mobile. What if no one looks at those reports? What if there's that step that I mentioned earlier where people mess around with the data before it gets into the lake? So what the leadership is seeing is not live data. The understanding all those perceptions is extremely important. Number three is who could be the champions within the organization. One of the fundamentals of digital transformation, which we're going to go into next, is that it's all about platforms. They call them LCAPs, low code application platforms. So if you've got highly skilled individuals within the organization, you know, whether they're making websites, they know HTML, you know, or they're programming, they're creating apps on PHP, these are ideal candidates for getting to learn these LCAP platforms, and that will allow you to accelerate your journey, as opposed to going in and saying, I don't have the people to do this journey. Number four is about the comms strategy. You need to, from the outset, not promise the world. You need to start with the leadership and everyone that first we're doing an audit of our existing, where we're at. We're going to fix our basics, and then we're, like the three phases that I mentioned, something akin to that in your own unique sort of ways. And I'm happy for you to reach out to me, and I can give you some pointers on that. But that's really important. You have to, you put a landmark every sort of distance, so people know what they're aiming for. If you just take a bunch of money, 20 million, and then you say we're doing digital, and you don't give guidance as to what you're trying to do and what the benefit will be, you will lose the goodwill after a few months. Number five is the perils of Google. The perils of Google are that everything's Googleable, if that's even a word. So we all know digital is about cloud. So if we're going to go into it a moment in terms of platforms, but one of the things I've seen is that what departments then start to do is look for cloud solutions to simple problems. So they'll commit to spending X amount of money, bring in a cloud solution, a SaaS solution to do, to help them. So for example, it might be legal wanting to bring a cloud solution to help with the sort of contract disputes, but the actual process might be simple, and that simple you can build on an LCAP. So that kind of stuff you have to sort of learn to control by having good relationships across the departments. Moving on. Oh, sorry, it got stuck. So next one is after you fixed your basics, immediate impact. So this is the digital thread that I'm talking about. For me, this is all about everything that we do in an organization. You'll find that there's very simple processes that might be 2 or 3, 4 or 5 steps long. So, somebody emails Bob, he receives an action, he goes and does it. The individual who started it, he has his own Excel of a tracker, and then Bob sends it to Jim, and Jim does something else, and very quickly you lose the action into this quagmire of poor comms, to be honest with you. That kind of thing, we want to bring it onto a platform. There's many platforms out there. There's stuff like Power Automate, Power Apps. You've got Unifier and Apex from Oracle, and there's lots of others. And the idea is that if you think of, I'll just take my headset thing. This for me is a cable, and I see that as my digital thread, that everything along this journey, my system should be getting a timestamp on it. Essentially, I should be able to at any moment in time understand how long that journey took. And over time, with Six Sigma principles and other things, what you're doing is that you are looking at where I can reduce the non-value add information. Six Sigma, lean thinking, these are great things, and I think people forget them. Often what I see is that you have a poor manual process. I'll give you an example. For example, you're onboarding somebody, it requires 6 signatures. So the digital transformation piece would be take this manual signature and make it into an e-signature. And that's for them, digital transformation. But really, you need an independent voice between IT or your digital teams and the business who asks that fundamental question of, is what we've got today actually the right way of doing it? So that needs to be challenged. Else, what you're going to do is, yes, if you take that example I gave to you and digitize it, you might get some speed acceleration, but it may be the case that instead of 6 signatures, you only actually needed 4. And that fundamental question traditionally would be that independent authority, such as a continuous service improvement team or otherwise, who would ask that question and really get to the meat of the matter in doing that. So when we do all of this, what it allows us to do is that it allows us to impact what people are doing today. If you take something away from all these emails and Excels that people are working on, and you're very quickly impacting what they do and improving what they do, then that human side of transformation, which things often fail on, will go in your favor. You'll start getting the momentum to do that. And obviously when you're doing it, the first examples that you pick across the organization should not be something that's a 20-step process. You should pick stuff that's pretty straightforward. The last point here is ecosystem and sequencing. Now, within your digital journey, there are tools out there. For example, let's take RPA, robotic process automation, which I would see as helping us on and this journey over here. Now, as we know, with RPA, it has some very common type of processes which you can, sort of immediately have an impact on, whether it's invoicing, accounts payable, etc. And they tend to sit around the ERP program. Now, if in your organization you're doing a mass ERP upgrade, then why would you invest heavily in RPA to start doing RPA deliverables? Because in 6 to 9 months or whatever long it is, you're going to have to build that again on the new ERP system. So you have to be very cost conscious and understand what is my sequencing. And it should really follow that, the example I brought at the start, the 3 phases, as well as once you're within that ecosystem, you've got to ask what's moving, what's the dependency, and when should I do it? And people don't do that. You need to step away in order to do that. And I've got some tools and stuff for that. I'm happy to share that. Right, the last piece for me is, penultimate
Question and
piece for
answer.
me.
If you have 5 minutes for that.
Yeah. I'll wrap this up quickly, Mohsin. Probably just need about a minute. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
last phase is Innovate and Lead. This is all about, where you're taking pioneering technologies where you're not sure if that's going to impact you. So what you have to do here is that, for example, let's say there's an IoT technology out there, you're not sure if that's going to operationally improve everything. So rather than going to the CFO and the steerco and asking for $20 million, what you should do is agree on a minimal but viable product or a proof of concept, and try it in a small ecosystem. So it's not costing you anything. And everyone's in agreement. Listen, I'm taking this idea, I'm applying it at a mini scale, and I'm trying to understand, is there the impact that's going to be, there for us? If it is, then it becomes a full-fledged project. Lastly, because I'm aware of Mohsin's timing, from day one, as I mentioned around governance, happy to give you guidance on this. I've got quite a lot of stuff on this, is you want to, once you've started a project, when you're initially picking your projects, you should have a set of attributes that you're measuring it against, whether it's MPV, IRR, etc. You need to rank those, and then what the idea is, you're picking your top projects that impact your company, that in the best sort of way. That's done before, during, and after. And that's it, Mohsin. So I'll leave